Black people have been under the microscope, both literally and figuratively, since coming to this country over 400 years ago. Our physique, athletic ability, and intellectual capacity have been the cause of speculation. Welcome to Myths of the Black Runner, featuring Olympic medalist Noah Lyles. During the Middle Passage, Africans were transported in deplorable conditions. Just over half of those who began that journey didn't make it to the end. Those who did were considered to be physically superior, the survival of the fittest theory. There's a lot of speculation about Black athletic performance, and many people often want to tie it back to slavery. The Middle Passage was an arduous journey. A lot of people have tried to argue that those who survived because they were more physically fit. They believe that that's the key to African-American athletic success. The meaning of sports changed once African-Americans began to win. Before, people used to say that athletic ability and intellectual capacity supported each other. But when African-Americans started to win, people began to say that there's an inverse relationship, the intellectual inferiority theory. After Jesse Owens wins 4 gold medals at the 1936 Olympics, people began to rethink the relationship between sports and intellectual capacity. That notion allows for widespread integration in sports because even as African Americans are competing at the highest level and winning, people are able to make an argument that still allows them to define African Americans as inferior. So whenever people have said that African Americans don't have the intelligence to compete at a particular event, African Americans started to compete in those spaces and to challenge those notions again and again. After African Americans began to dominate track during the early 20th century, scholars turned to the pseudoscience of measurement to explain African American dominance, the scientific measurement myth. Since the invention of race, it's often been tied to hierarchy, which has placed whites at the top and Black people always at the bottom. And scientists have used questionable methods to try to justify those ideals, measuring skulls, limbs, and feet to try to make arguments about why people are different. Those ideas are false. There's more variability within racial groups than between racial groups. Race itself is a fiction, tied to notions of hierarchy, but there's no biological basis. One of the most popular beliefs is that plantation owners use selective breeding to create stronger, faster, and bigger workers, the Mandingo Theory. This highlights this idea that there was a systematic attempt to create physically superior human beings. However, historians have not been able to find evidence that this was the case. Rather, one of the things that African Americans who were enslaved did was they fought to create family even when it was difficult. There's just not much evidence to support that African Americans were bred to create high-performing workers. Many people believe that African American athletic success is due to raw, natural talent rather than hard work, focus, and discipline, the natural ability theory. Since the 1970s, there have been a number of studies which show a disparity between how African American athletes and white athletes are described in the sports media. African Americans are often talked about as natural athletes, as instinctive, as physically gifted, whereas white athletes are often depicted as intelligent, as gym rats, as hardworking. And African Americans often have to confront these stereotypes on the field and off the field. Now that we've debunked these 5 myths, the next time you see an African American win a race and you feel the need to overthink it, don't.
Not you.